So we're going to be talking to TJ London soon. She's going to pop in any minute now. Welcome. And there you are. Yay. Hi.
Hello. My first live. I am no longer a virgin.
I do love popping cherries. It's one thing I do rather well, it seems. If it's not on the podcast, it's not here on Instagram as well. So that is great. Congratulations on your release of The Rebel. It is fantastic. It's here. It's Friday, and just cheers to this
I
because
brought
we
water with
need.
me so I didn't misbehave. If it was anything else, you never know what will come out of my mouth. So we're just
I
going to go with
usually
water.
don't. I usually do not. But girl, it's been a thing.
Well, after this, I've
Oh, you froze a little bit there. Hold on. Hold on. You froze. Can you hear me? Oh, TJ. Ah. Let's see. Sorry, TJ. You may have to come back out and back in again because you are frozen and I can't see you. Oh, yeah, we lost TJ. Hold on. Let me see. Accepting. There we go. TJ, come back. You have no.
Okay, we're going to
There
try this
you are.
again.
There
It was
you are.
weird. It was weird. All of a sudden, you disappeared. I was like, wow, I really did drink too much water.
No,
There is a
you're
such
good.
thing as
It's
hydration like euphoria. So maybe I'm like,
maybe, maybe, but so you have your water, I have my mead,
now
because
my
yes,
phone just
guys,
needs
that is what I
to
drink.
not misbehave, and
Right.
we'll be good.
Yes. So I want to talk about the Rebel, but before we do, I kind of want to talk about RT a little bit and all the highlights and the fun stuff because you used RT a bit to kind of drum up that that buzz about the Rebel by having a really big ass on there. But I want to talk about your highlights. What are some of the things that you're like goshing loving about this event that happened to you personally?
Well, first of all, it was a coincidence that my book was coming out like right at that time because I could never have timed it that well. But it was great timing. It worked out. I believe in like the cosmos coming
Hmm.
together to make things work for you. And sometimes if you just roll with it and own it, then things can turn out really well. So this did work out really well. I recognize that RTD has its challenges and it had its foibles and its issues, and they've been dissected and dialogued, and I've even said my piece on them. So I'm really going to kind of respect those and leave
Hmm.
those to the side.
I want
And
I want the good stuff, girl. I
and
want the good
but
stuff.
I do want to recognize, because there are a lot
Yes,
of people there were things that were stressful and upsetting, and I don't want to
absolutely.
discount those things. So respect. And
Yep.
but in the face of adversity and difficult situations, we often have a lot of fun. I'm really good at having fun during shit shows, weirdly. But seriously, it was an incredible event for me. Like the first day probably was the most amazing thing happened to me. I like came down the escalator and there was Alexi Cloud Walker, this beautiful picture that was life size. I do want to say something about that. So back when I was a little newbie, like writer, not even an author, I went to Romantic Times. So shout
Mm-hmm.
out to my Romantic Times people out there if you guys remember. Whoop,
Yep.
whoop.
Love that.
And I went there, and there were these big, beautiful wall stickies and floor stickies. And I remember seeing um, Christina
Hmm.
Lauren. She had a beautiful secret. And like everywhere I went, I'm like, damn it, that thing is everywhere. Like, I've got to buy that book now. Like, I have no interest in it, but I was just like, now I've got to have it. And funny enough, I did buy it. And I ended up in the hospital not long after that event with my
Hmm.
migraines. That's when they really started to progressively get worse. And I brought that book with me and actually read it in the hospital. And it was like company for me as that went on. But so I do want to say that I dreamed of these big murals, right? Like one of these
Hmm.
days I'm going to get one, but it's a lot harder when you're an
Yes.
indie. Because I mean, it's expensive. You only got so much money to put towards promo. So I dreamed big, and we got this beautiful cling, and you designed it for me. So thank
Yes,
you
I
so
did.
much. Out of my cover. And so, like, I kind of walked up and kissed it, and the world was right. And
Several times she did that, guys.
I did,
Several,
and
several
no one
times.
draws attention to the fact that I was rather close to a certain part of his anatomy when I did it. Facts. So, yes, I own that. I did do that. So
Yeah.
that was a highlight for me. Another highlight. There was so many incredibly creative, fun, interesting people at this
Hmm.
event. Between narrators, authors, PR individuals,
Hmm.
personal assistants, writers, fans, friends. It was just such an amazing event in terms of like that energy that was there. I know we've had a lot of negative things happen in the romantic community, the romantic writing community, book community, however you want to put it. But so many people there came with this spirit of excitement and fun, and it just, in the face of everything that was going on, people were just, they were just so lovely. I don't know what else to say. Like, I met so many amazing people, and like my Facebook is blown up, which is so exciting, and my Instagram with all these new people, and whether they're fans of my writing or not, they're friends now, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's really about, that community, because when it really comes down to it, we all love the same thing. We love books and good stories, and being together, and that camaraderie. And so RT for me was amazing. And I had a line at my
I
table, which I was just like, whoa.
know. I have
I was
proof of
like,
that in case
I
I
was
have
like,
pictures and
whose
videos.
whose table is this? And some of my friends from a historical romance retreat, which is a historical community, they were all like, "You have a line. Do you realize that?" Because usually I'm like, "They're come."
Yes.
Join the revolution, right? Like, read my books, And so it was humbling and
Mm-hmm.
exciting, and um, gosh, it was
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah.
So I recognize that there were challenges, but I kind of feel like I was
Mm-hmm.
blessed too. I was just really blessed.
Yeah.
So thank you to everybody. I would make a shout out, but I honestly met so many people, and if I forgot somebody, I would feel
Yeah.
really bad. So all of you.
Yes. So we have on watching us talk is we have Carol Angela, Shiloh James, Anna Marie Lewis, Angelina Roca is here too.
So
She
many
gives the best
goddesses.
hugs, by the way. Angelina
Oh,
does. Oh, she gets the big hugs and stuff like that. It is one of my highlights for this event was actually getting to meet you in person for the
I know,
first time
right?
ever.
People think like just because we do this stuff together that I've never met
Me
Tarlangella in
neither.
person.
Yeah.
I know, and like she's my lead on my
Mhm.
series. Like I've seen her in we've done podcasts and lives, which are
Yes.
always amazing. But like I want to hug
Yes.
her physically,
Yes. Yes.
and that's a beautiful thing to have
Hmm.
that kind of energy. Like people in person, 2020 really reminded us that there's a gift to being together, and
Hmm.
But no, yes, Shiloh James is saying I'm still blown away that you hadn't met each. No, no,
Nope.
no.
But it was like we knew each other for 20,000 years when we got together after all the hugging.
I know, it's like, oh my God. And I'm weirdly like a hugger.
Hmm.
And that's, I mean, because I work in medicine, right? So you'd think I'd be like afraid of germs and stuff, but I'm like, no, hug
Yeah,
me.
it's like hugs.
So yes, I'm a
Yeah.
bit of a hugger.
Yeah. So am I, but I love it. I think it's great. It's some of us does a love language and things like that. But also, I am the girl that also goes, "Are you a hugger? Because I'm a hugger. Are you a hugger?" And then we
I
kind of
do.
go from there.
You got to check. You do have to check. Like, because some
Yes.
people, I had a boss once, okay, and he hated it, but
Mhm.
he was my boss, so I have to mess with
Yeah.
him, right? So I'd be like,
Hmm.
oh, boom, let's hug, and he'd be like, oh my God, oh, too much.
Yeah.
I need space.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, Alicia's here too. Yay.
yay! I see
Yay.
so many people like coming
Hmm.
to feed. I'm like, what? She says she's a hugger too. I
Good.
know. I've
Okay,
hugged
that's
you a few
good to
times.
know. Good to
I've hugged
know.
you a few times. You were
Well,
clearly
there's also for
okay
me,
with that.
yeah, for me, there's something like when you get that hug and you just go, everything just gets better. And, it's just one of those things for me. I know everybody's different, but I was like so in love with like being able to see you in person and again, we saw it like as if we knew each other for 20,000 years and running around at the event, but also seeing your face every single time that we walked by that cling on that
I
wall was just
did across it on a
priceless.
daily basis. I did. The funny thing is, so full disclosure, I work in the drug business
Hmm.
kind of thing, right? And big wall clings are a thing. And I even posted a picture of this building, this skyscraper,
Yes.
literally had one on there. And I was like, oh my God, hashtag goals. Like we need
Yeah.
another one of those. And we need an Alexi on the
Hmm.
skyscraper. And next, Danielle Lanzrada, if you guys know where she's my producer. She's
Hmm.
like, what do you think about Times Square? We might be able to make that happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just taking on a whole
Yeah.
life of its
It,
own. I can't
it,
go up and
it
kiss
is
it in Times
technically
Square.
on my list, but I need to definitely have the template for that one. Girl, I got goals for you, okay?
Goals. All right. Well, I'd love to see a beautiful Alexi up there, I mean, that
Right?
would be fun.
Exactly. That'd be fantastic. But now we know fast forward on Friday, the ebook and the paperback of The Rebel. of the is available. Look at that. It's a big thick book. We
If you
you
like,
like them thick, girl.
I like them thick and juicy, right? Like it's you can call it a fruit cake, you can call it whatever you want. The funny thing is I am verbose for everybody who knows me. They're like, "Yep, she talks a lot." Well, clearly I realize it in paperback form. I'm like, "Wow, Trace, really? You, seriously?" But honestly, every bit of it needed to be here. Thicky, I
Thick,
agree.
yes.
But it's funny because I haven't had a lot of people read this because I was holding this one
He
really
really
close to
was.
my heart. But the people who did read it, they're like, no, you can't cut any of it. So it's thick for a reason. You can hit somebody with it if they piss you
I
off,
was gonna
right?
say multi-purpose, but I didn't want to bring that up. But the reality too is like I am fine with the thickness of when it comes down to books, so long as there's no fillers. And if it could have been a novella, and because of all the fillers, then that's an issue. But with yours, from start to finish, your stories are complete in that keeping you going, keeping you guessing what's going on, why are they there? Oh my god! And it's just all these things. So I'm really excited to put my hands on that, Alex, because she didn't even let me read it, girl,
I
guys.
didn't
Okay.
let any, I was really a jerk about
Yeah.
this
No,
one.
not
I'm
a
gonna,
jerk. I think you were keeping it close to your heart because it's also a little different than what you're used to writing, I
it
think, right?
is.
So,
It's
yeah.
not my John Carlisle.
Yep. That's
Usually I'm like,
the other
oh
thing,
please,
too.
everybody go read my John. Alexi's a very different child.
Mm-hmm.
So, but actually, it was one that I write from counseling, and I'm very honest about this. And this one is no different. And I was kind of in the thick of the struggle as I was writing it, and was continuing to be a bit in the thick of the struggle. So I was just having a hard time separating it from it. The Tory, the Traitor, and the Turncoat I wrote back in 2014, 15, 16,
Mm-hmm.
when they came out later. So I had a lot of separation from this story. This one I was kind of, deep in the thick of it. So it was a lot harder for me to like let somebody into my brain quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so now I'm kind of like, all bets are off now. Y'all get to find out what's going on. So I
Yeah.
might have to explain myself to a few people after this one.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the reading order first, and then we'll get into specifically about the Rebel. Because we were like, oh, we want to start with this one as your new release, but this is part of a saga. So if someone was going to start grabbing to read your books right now, what order do you suggest that they read this in?
Okay, so I have a whole thing behind this. If I could go to every reader when they look at my books and just like have a little video of me, hello, how are you? I'm TJ London. Let's talk about this. I like to think of myself a bit like Outlander, although I can't claim that kind of fame or all the things that Daniel Gabaldon can. So, but in the same vein, I am a saga. So the story is actually written the Tory, the Traitor, the Turncoat. Those are all my John Carlisle stories. And that he's got more, but just for right now. Okay, so the Tory, the Traitor, the Turncoat, then Man of War actually comes third. And the reason it came third was because I didn't want to give away my inspiration or all the secrets first. Like I kind of felt like Star Wars a bit. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now we get to find out what Anakin was doing all that time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that idea.
Yeah.
But the truth is, actually, Man of War was the first book I ever did actually write. I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't feel like it needed to be revealed yet. So it goes the Tory, the Traitor, the Turncoat, then technically Man of War, and then the Rebel. Here's the thing, though. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not vested on 3 books, and they're all like, the size of a fruit cake. And I don't want to do that. I want a complete story. I want to know that I can actually do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's commitment, right? And especially once I get my meat hooks into you and you're like,
Yeah.
what's happening? So I always tell people if that's the case, you don't know if historical fiction or my style of historical fiction is your thing, you can read Man of War. It's a complete book. It's not going to ruin the rest of the saga. You're gonna be fine. You'll be fine. I'll walk you through it. And you'll get a complete story. And then you get out the end of it and you're like, okay, I dig her style of writing, or I'm like, yeah, like historical, that's not my jam, or
Mm-hmm.
her type of historical is not my jam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I intended the Tory, the Traitor, the Turncoat, then Man of War. But again, you can read Man of War as a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for my super rebellious people who are like, damn it, I'm a cover whore. I got to go in for the Rebel first. I am a cover whore. Respect. And Alexei is 6'5" in all man, so I get it. You could technically go, all right, I'm going to fight it. I'm going to be a rebel. I'm going to read that first. It's not going to spoil the rest of the saga. It's probably going to make you go, okay, I want to go back and know
Mm-hmm.
what happened. It won't do that because it's a little separate story. So And then, as we get in and talk about that, I can kind of explain a little
Hmm.
bit of that. So did I make that a little bit easier, I
I
think?
think so, because again, it's commitments. We said it, and there's also other
Yeah.
books out there that are like 10 books deep in a series, but they might be the equivalent of yours as far as length goes, and thickness. But still, some of them also are really thick, and so it's good to know where to kind of
Right.
start, and also have that water testing just in case, because your historical fiction is not like usual historical fiction. You dark, girl. You
Res-
dark.
Respect to my beautiful colleagues in the business.
Hmm.
I work with some of the most amazing writers, and unfortunately right now, historical, we're not in the limelight right now, but they're there and they're writing fabulous work.
Yes.
It's just different from what I'm doing.
Hmm.
um so and that's okay, like they're doing different things too, right? I'm obviously telling Revolutionary War. It's more common right now to see a lot
Hmm.
of Regency Beaumont, although I see a lot of amazing Victorian
Hmm.
out there. There is, Catherine Levesque is doing her medieval, which is always fantastic. I mean, they're there if you go
Yes.
looking for them. Just like in the contemporary realm, we're all kind of doing something different.
Hmm.
I feel like we're a little bit not seen right now, but they're out there
Yeah.
and amazing too, by the way. I want to add
Yes.
that. So,
I kind of want to say almost like a speakeasy. If you know, you know,
right,
and
right.
sooner people are starting to get out there. Shiloh does have a great question. Is the Rebel going to be a standalone, or is it going to be another
Oh,
set
I
of
got a
books?
spice question too.
All right.
So, so first of all, is it going to be a standalone? Well, no, it is not. I just never do anything small. It was meant to be a standalone, but we'll get
Yes.
into even the history of it.
Yes. Yes.
It was meant to be a standalone, but it's actually part of three in the
Hmm.
middle of the saga. So we'll get into when that's going to be ready. Spice level. Okay. I'm going to say that they're not going to be doing it on the back of a horse. They're not going to fall into a stable and start doing it. We're not going to see them randomly in the middle of the war going, I need to go have sex in a tree somewhere. This is just not going to
Yeah.
happen. I,
Hmm.
I am a historical fiction with romantic elements. So
Yes.
I don't always promise a happy ending. Ha ha ha. And I don't always promise you that they're going to jump in the hay after 20 pages. Um, they're going to get there. I prefer to think of myself as a bit of a
Yes.
slow burn,
Yes.
because I have to say that. I'm a little more like Outlander, and you're going to have a big progressive story, but you're also going to get it.
Hmm.
When we have sex, when we have sex,
Hmm.
I definitely try to give you what you want.
Hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Or make you really pissed off about the way that played out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And also you have really good banter. So that's the other thing too, that sexual tensions between the characters kind of builds it up. So when they finally do go do whatever it is that they're gonna go do, it's really
Lots
like,
of
oh my
that in
God.
this. Lots
Yeah.
of that in this. At one point, my editor was like, all right, I'm done with the banter. I need something. Give me something, TJ. Give me something. So we do get there occasionally. So, but I
Yeah.
just want to say, imagine somebody narrates all this stuff too, as well. So respect to Tara out there.
Mm-hmm.
She narrates these big ones for me, girl.
Does. Several people do. We'll get to the audiobooks towards
Right.
the end a
Yes.
little bit. Okay, so now the Rebel. Tell us about the story. What exactly what's the story about for those that may not have
So
read the back or anything else?
are you wanting like my story, or you want the story?
What do you
um,
want to give me?
Well, I'll separate the two. So the story itself is about Alexei McKesson, or Alexei Cloud Walker, as he's known in the story. He is the cousin of our heroine of the series. So most people know Dallas McKesson. She is narrated by the fabulous and fantastic Tarlan Gella.
Hmm.
I've got to give her the credit, because she's so amazing. And so he is a cousin. He is also a his voiceover is done by Adam Gold. So I just want to add that there. So it's about Alexei McCusson. And if my fans remember in The Traitor, so that's the second book in the saga, at one point there was this heiress that John Carlyle was supposed to go rescue. And she disappeared, and no one knew what happened to her. And obviously she was coming to the Americas to be with her husband, who was a British major, and just kind of disappeared. She was also coming with a cache of weapons on her ship, as well as a lot of money and gold, and her dowry and all those fun things that women came with in the back, when they came over here. There's always got to be the setting, right?
Yeah.
So she disappeared. John was supposed to rescue her, and then obviously we know he had to go off and deal with other
Hmm.
issues. So where did she go? Well, in this book we find out that Alexei kidnapped her, and Alexei is in a situation where some of his men have been captured in The Traitor, by Major Butler, and they're being held prisoner at Fort Niagara. And these are obviously people of the Standing Stone, or they are known as the United Nations. So he's part of the United Nation. And so they are in a situation, a political situation with the British at the time. The British really need the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, or we know them as the Six Nations of the Iroquois. They need their fighting strength on the frontier to help defeat the rebels or the colonials, right? So they capture these men to try to leverage the Oneida, who were pro-colonist, to join their part of the journey, the fight, right? Well, Joseph, the chief, he can't negotiate. He can't put the lives of many on three of his men. So
Right.
here's where Alexei comes into the story. He's like, all right, I know how to get my men back. I am going to use this woman as leverage. I'm going to kidnap her and use her as leverage. And so that's how the story starts. And most people who've read the saga understand that this is part of the story, right? So, but Wilhelmina Parkhurst, or Wilhelmina Tomlinson, as we also know her, she is not going to go down without a fight. This is a woman she is a rebellious woman. This is a woman who's been through a lot in her life, and just because some 6'5", long-haired, good-looking, rogue is going to capture me doesn't mean I'm going to, just do what he says. So it's about their journey together, but we're also going to travel through Alexei's psyche as well as hers. And yeah, so that's kind of the start of it. But it's my version of a very twisted kind of like romancing the stone, all the kind of things, I guess, is however you want to put it. But it's a caper, it's a kidnapping, it's a love story, it's a tragedy. It's a trip through two people who are having who are on the precipice of war and on their own personal wars and their emotions in their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And so turning it onto my side of the story, where does it come from? So I'm always transparent about writing from counseling. I write for my own mental health. And I often take my counseling very seriously, and I write as part of it. And I'm going to full disclosure here. Everybody's going to go, whoa. This is my first story I've written since I've been in the audiobook world. I actually started in the audiobook world in 2020. And that's when I started writing this book. And initially, I was very separated from John Carlyle through the audio process. He is my muse. And as I got separated from him, I was unable to really write and find him, because the next story was really supposed to be one of his. And so my editor, who loved Alexei from the very beginning, she's like, damn it, write me that Alexei book right now if you can't write if you can't write John. And then Danielle Lansrada was like, can you write me an Alexei book, please? And so I was like, okay, all right, let's try this. And everything was shit I was writing. I mean, it was shit. I just kept looking at it going, this is just not working. Okay. And I started back to counseling, and my counselor was like, she goes, Tracy, when you let go and you embrace what you're going through and you open up, that's when you do your best work. She goes, so let's open up. What are you hurting about? What are you struggling with? And so the book is actually, the emotion behind it is my journey through the audio world, actually. And being in the audiobook business, the drama that goes on behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, my journey through the romance world, my journey through being someone who's working on their mental health, and it becomes this book, and then it becomes this production, and trying to stay grounded in this whole process. And also the intimacy of sharing something so very personal, your feelings, your heart, your hurt, with people that you have no control over, and how that blooms and changes and becomes. And so and then the story found me. And so it's an incredibly intimate story about, and Alexei really represents, when you share so much of yourself, as Wilhelmina does in ways, how you can find yourself incredibly betrayed, sometimes disarmed, sometimes the people around you can loom large over you when you're just, feel very infinitesimal in this space. So, so that's the other half of it. Yeah. So I've said
It,
enough.
well, well, you just make us want more. So, which is what Alicia said. She's like, what I can appreciate is you have given us readers enough breadcrumbs. Like, Oliver, can I please have some more? And this sounds really interesting. And Rye Page says, yeah, getting kidnapped is always better when the kidnapper is hot as fuck.
So the best
Yeah.
part of the story, okay, I'll full disclosure, I'll give it. So she gets thrown out on the deck, because he shows up in her room and it's pitch black in there. Okay, he drags her. The only thing she sees is his eyes and his war paint on his face because he's a
Mm-hmm.
warrior, right? Alexa Walker is a warrior. He's a warrior of the Standing Stone, and he throws her out on the deck, and obviously there's just enough candlelight on it, so she's like leaning back and leaning back. She keeps leaning back because she's like 5 foot tall and he's 6'5", and she's like, oh
Yeah.
my god, you're like the tallest man I've ever seen. But also, of course it helps that he's, got leggings on and, all the things. And, he's got this long hair down. He's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just helps. I wish I'd be like kidnapped by someone who looked like that. Right. But honestly, the story though goes on to, he is a very, he's a warrior,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is the 1700s. This is not exactly like going to be your nicest kidnapper, right? And also, he's a man with a mission. So, I get to write those naughty behaviors and have a justification for it because
Mm-hmm.
it's the 1700s, and put my disclosure at the beginning. But, honestly, he's on a
Mm-hmm.
mission. He's a man on a mission. He has a goal, and she's a means to an end. So this is
Mm-hmm.
not coming into it meant to be like they're going to kidnap and they're going to
Yeah.
romance. This is I'm kidnapping you and I want my men and you're going to help me.
Yep.
And this is how this is going to go. So either you do as I say or you're not going to like it. And so we're definitely going to see the darker side. And those who read the rest of the saga, they know Alexei. They know he's not always, the nicest character
Mm-hmm.
too as well. We know that he's not above using his cousin. He's not above using anybody to get what he wants. And this is
Mm-hmm.
certainly the case here. He's not above using a woman to get what he wants. So
Yeah. Yeah, it reads a lot like almost like for those that are fans of trigger warnings, she does have a list of trigger
yes,
warnings.
yes.
And but also and this is something Shiloh had mentioned, and then even with the description of what you were just saying, it all kind of comes across almost like a dark mafia romance. So so for
Well,
those that like mafia and dark romance, you might want to pick this
Well,
up.
I don't have as much sex as them. I can't take because I've got to add my history.
Yeah.
I've got to set this stage because I recognize that every reader like is going to go, okay, 1700s on the frontier. Like,
Hmm.
what does that look like? So I definitely have to give you the scenery and I have to set the stage. But yeah, Shiloh James absolutely said to me, she goes, this kind of runs into that realm. And I was like, I never thought about
Hmm.
that, right? And I've never thought about it like dark historical, but I can actually get behind that because I've had a lot of my friends who are like, you know what, Trace, I can't do it. It goes too much into this realm of darkness. Respect, I get it, right?
Hmm.
But that was never my intent when I sat down to write it. It
Yeah.
was I'm in counseling and I'm trying to keep myself from doing, some bodily harm. I was in a very sad place when I wrote my first three books. So I wasn't thinking about where I was going or I wasn't intending on even
Hmm.
publishing. I was just trying to be in a place where I was healthier. And my
Hmm.
husband today, we were laughing. I was like, Fred, today's my book drop. He goes, I said, I don't know if I'm gonna have a lot of sales. He goes, but do you feel better? He's like, are you happy? Do you feel
Hmm.
healthier? I'm like, yeah. He goes, then the journey's been accomplished.
Hmm.
You've met your goal. So for me, the fact that the book exists is a miracle.
Hmm.
It's the journey that it took me on that
Yeah.
matters most, right? Like,
Yeah.
that I've been able to continue to manage through my own mental health
Hmm.
issues. So
Yeah, but I mean, I think when it comes down to books and the details, right? Same thing when it comes down to the sex, you have the fade to black behind closed doors, you
yeah,
have a
there's none of
little bit
that.
and stuff like
No
that.
fadings to black.
Right. But the thing is, you have these different levels, but that also comes into some of the things when it comes down to historical. You could have that fight
Yeah.
scene in which,
Oh, yeah.
things can go into black and you have to imagine what potentially could have happened on that field, or the author tells you, and that's also why you have the trigger warnings because
Yeah.
she tells you.
Thank you. Yes. We do see scalpings, and I
Yeah.
do talk about the legitimacy and the history of those throughout
Mm-hmm.
the series because that is a real thing. Um, War
Yeah.
is war, and there are winners and losers, and I'm trying to tell a story about
Mm-hmm.
that too. And while I understand in many stories in romance, heroes don't, kill other people. Unfortunately, they do in mine. I mean, because I'm trying to take you into a realistic
Mm-hmm.
version. I mean, obviously, I'm still telling a fiction, But it's also part of what I was going on in my psyche, right? Like I needed
Mm-hmm.
to purge in those ways and find a safe space to purge in those ways, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it was a tool for me. And I get that some people read and they're like, oh my goodness, right? But that's the journey that I'm trying to take you on as a reader, and I took myself on as
Mm-hmm.
someone on my own journey. So
Yeah, but that's also when Shallow mentioned the whole the dark romance
yeah.
and dark mafia and stuff like that. I'm going, oh, these are the guys that do kill, kidnap her,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden they're in love, and that's the whole journey of the story, kind of a thing. So I'm like, yeah, that fits. That's it. Yeah, that fits.
And they're instead of handcuffs, I don't have handcuffs. They do tie each other up. They do get tied up with ropes and different things. We have shackles and all those kind of fun things. They're not fuzzy though or any of that good stuff, but we do have those. And we do have some of the naughties too. But again, I always try to stay in the vein of
Yep.
the realistic,
Mhm.
and be true to the story because ultimately it's a war
Yeah.
journey. And it's also the journey of a very important journey of the Oneida Nation
Hmm.
and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and obviously I'm not of that culture, but I'm trying to stay true to the historical representation during this time period and being respectful of that.
Yes.
So I'm always trying to take great care with their history, because it's an important history. It's oftentimes a looked over history. So
Yes.
I want to ask people to question and to go further and ask their own questions.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's too that your stories are some that it's not like with romance you automatically think the audience is just female cis and stuff like that for that the biggest
Right.
chunk. It's yours is historical fiction. This is also the kind of great book that you and your husband or your partner that may not like the romance stuff that would be able to pick it up, and you guys can do a buddy read, which I know that was something people do, or even friends and stuff like that. That's where it kind of spans across multiple aspects of
Yeah.
people's lives that could be like, oh, that it's a it's a war book. Yay, great! It's a little bit of
I don't
romance.
want to
Yay.
discount some of my male readers,
Yes.
actually, and my couple listeners. I have some couples who like to listen
Yeah.
together, and it's really exciting to have my male
Hmm.
listeners and my male readers because, um, I do try to tackle some issues that are specific to soldiers and men during war. And obviously, I don't want to take away from Man of War. That's a sailor's story. I was fortunate to have a sailor and someone who served in James Cheatham, who was on my cast. And so, I'm trying to bring them into the story,
Hmm.
although that was not my original
Right.
target.
Right.
It's been a really fortunate, amazing byproduct of
Hmm.
the process. So I'm really excited to like all readers, and
Hmm.
the fun part is what they find in the story.
Yes.
I know what I see in the story, but sometimes it's like you see the trees and not the
Hmm.
forest, right? And I've had so many readers come back and been like, no, 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 look at this in the forest. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't see
Ooh.
that. And it's really amazing. So
Hmm.
that's the best part is when people come back and this is what they see in the story or this is what they find. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's so I know you kind of touched base on how this book technically wasn't supposed to be, and so you shared that and how it came about. But I also
yes.
kind of heard that he's not your favorite character.
So Danielle Lanzarana, darn it, are you on here? Because she's going to
No,
be
I
mad.
haven't seen her, but I know she's going to
Okay.
be popping later to
She
watch this.
she's going to
So,
be chuckling evilly behind there. So no, Alexei McKesson was not my favorite character. As a matter of fact, I hated the character. And I used him basically as my beating post, my bad boy, my rebel who came in and really thwarted my beloved John Carlyle. I don't play favorites, not at all.
no.
So he yeah, I hated that character. There was never meant to be a book. I'm going to be very
Hmm.
frank. And I have a lot of fans who like fell in love with Alexei. They're like, "Oh my God, he's so great." I'm like, "Why? What don't I know? He's using the heroine. He's using his cousin. Like he does all these things." But it's interesting what people find. This is a truth that they found that I didn't. And so many of them could explain to me why Alexei was a great character and deserved a story. And so when I was in this place of a separation from John Carlyle, and I was like,
Hmm.
shit, I got to write another book. What am I going to do here? Like, um, my editor, she just likes him because he's got long hair and he's tall. It's all about like aesthetics with her. But for the people who did love him, I was like, okay, all right, let's go here. Let's try this. And it's really interesting the lessons that your characters teach you and the vision and the journeys they take you on. I posted today earlier that these two characters really did save me in this business. I truly was like at the point where I'm like, I don't know that I want to keep writing. I mean, I have another career. It's just, this is hard. It's like pushing a stone uphill, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's really, it is. Um, and I sat down, and when the story started flowing and I truly like surrendered to it, and I surrendered to him, Alexei taught me, and Wilhelmina, not to take away from her, taught me so much about myself in ways. He's a fierce character. He's fiercely protective. He's brave. He's insensitive. He's
Mm-hmm.
horrible. And he taught me to take those characteristics in a good way and use them also in my own life,
Mm-hmm.
and to reflect on my journey that I was going through and to understand it better, to come out the other end a stronger person. So he went from being my least favorite character to I absolutely adore him, and he's super special to me. And now it's a different mentality I have to get into to tell Alexei's story. It's like a very different brain. He's not funny in the way that John is. He's not naughty and witty. This is a very straight warrior, hard character. But I honestly think I probably really am more that person in real life, and in how I deal with business and all the things. And so he was a blessing. He came
Mm-hmm.
when I needed me, and he rescued me. He didn't kidnap me. He rescued me. So he might have kidnapped Wilhelmina. That's her problem. But in my world, he saved me, as an author. And so I'm super proud of it.
Yeah.
And I love him dearly. He's not John Carlyle. But,
Not
but I
that she
love him
has
dearly.
favorites again.
But and here's the thing, like this book, I took a lot of risks that I would take nowhere else,
Mm-hmm.
because Alexi was like, we're going to take risks together. Like we're going to go down this road. We're going to do these things. We're going to take the reader places that are going to be, scary and challenging. And through him, I was brave. I
Mm-hmm.
was braver than I ever have been as a writer. So this is probably some of my most fearless writing, I will say. And people are going to leave this book and go, ooh, they may have
Mm-hmm.
strong feelings, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I was having strong feelings too. And then if you do that, I've taken you where I wanted you to. I didn't necessarily say I was going to take you to this book and make you happy. I was going to take you into this book and take you on a journey.
Yes.
And so if you're there with me, if we're present on the page together, it's going to be a journey.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. And I think readers want that. Readers want to be taken into that journey and go somewhere else and not be on their couch, for an example, or listening if they're doing audiobooks, not be at their desk doing work,
right,
and things like that.
right.
So the fact that you can take us on this journey is really, really good. Now, the thing too, with you were saying with the characters, with Alexa being significantly more firm
Mhm.
and stern. Wilhelmina, who came out, as far as the character in, the turncoat, is that funny part, is that charismatic moment. So they kind of balance each other out. Do you agree with that?
I
Yeah.
would. So Wilhelmina is kind of looking at him like, oh my gosh, like, I got you. I got you. I've been married now twice. Like, she has a very checkered past with
Mm-hmm.
men. And so she's like, no, I've seen your type. I know what you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're troubled. She calls him a beautiful broken thing in
Mm-hmm.
her mind. And she recognizes that, she's been through a lot. So she's actually a little bit older than him. And she kind of looks at him like, yeah, you're trouble. I see all the problems. And she likes to mess with him too, because she knows he's got like short temper, short
Yeah.
fuse. He's quick to ignite, she just likes to press. I mean, she's 5 foot nothing, and he's like, so it's
Yeah.
even better. So she's just like elbow, elbow, elbow. But the truth is that she's braver than shit too.
Mm-hmm.
She's not afraid of him because
Mm-hmm.
she's been down this road, and she's like, no, I've been through dealing with men. Like, and one of the things the character ever even says in the story is she's like, I'm the freest I've ever been being a captive. Because when you think about what women went through back then, and we're going to go
Mm-hmm.
through that journey, her journey in the story, it makes sense that based on what's happening to her, she's freer in her life than she's ever been as a captive. And
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna talk about women's issues, and she's gonna take you into deep places as women. And she not only does she make me laugh, but she makes me go, yes, yes. Because so many times we all do codependent relationships, or relationships where we're kind of dominated by the person we're
Mm-hmm.
in love with. And she's not going to let that happen to herself. Now, granted, we all still fall into it. We're like, oh my God, that's my trigger man. Like, I need to not go there. He's the bad guy. And then you go there and you get what you think you're going to get. But
Mm-hmm.
she's like, not this time. this time I'm not going to let it do this to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a lot of that go on too, as well as we do start to move into those romantic moments, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she's going to fight just as hard as he is.
Good.
But
You're like
she's
a
going to
strong
fight,
heroine.
but she's going to fight like a woman would.
Mm-hmm.
And in her time period, remember, like there's a such thing as what we do now, but what would a woman in her time period do?
Yes.
So we have to put our head in that space. And so, because she's not going to just like haul off and punch him like probably one of us would do if he acted like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be like, okay, like, how do I deal with this guy? Like,
Yeah.
how do I manipulate him into getting what I want?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know we did talk about the reading order, but also we didn't touch so much on the timeline. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
rebel occurs more or less alongside the turncoats.
No,
So
okay,
no.
so it's a weird spot. Okay, so it occurs halfway through the Trader
Mm-hmm.
and the first like 10 chapters
Mm-hmm.
of the Turncoat. So why it happens there is because at the end of the Trader, this heiress disappears as part of that
Mm-hmm.
story, and then she kind of shows up in other places, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is, we know Alexei was causing problems off stage. We just didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
So this is where he's off stage. So you will see scenes from the Trader from the
Mm-hmm.
opposite perspective.
Yes.
But what it will do is you'll be like, "Whoa, I didn't realize that was going on. I didn't even see that coming." So it's going to enlighten you. Those of you who read the Trader, you're going to go, "Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
get it." And those of you who go for the Rebel first, you're going to be like, all right, like, what did I miss here? And you're going to go back and you're going to read the Trader and go, oh, I get it. So it's kind of, I tried to build, me and my editor worked very carefully to not give too much away,
Mm-hmm.
so that if somebody does roll into both books, you have to really read both of them to catch the whole part of the story.
Yeah.
So
And I like that when authors do that, because
it's
we're
hard.
seeing it as almost like a, yes, it is. I'm sure it
That's
was.
why it takes
Um,
4 years to write a book.
yeah.
But
When it comes down to that, is we kind of see it as if it's a movie in front of us, so we're only seeing what you're showing
right,
us, and we see the other stuff in the background, and we're going, I wonder what they're
right.
thinking, or how are they seeing it,
And,
and
and
you've given us that.
right. And Lexi makes a very big change in the Trader.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he make this change? And we're about to find out
Mm-hmm.
if Wilhelmina had something to do with it.
Ooh.
So that's the thing. So there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
some really big, for my readers that I
Mm-hmm.
have right now, or those who go and pick it up before they go to the Rebel. They're going to go, oh, didn't see that coming, but
That's
okay,
why.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the Rebels now that released today, and as any other reader that we love your books and stories, we're going to ask you, when's the next one coming out?
Ah, yes. Well, no, you won't have to wait 3
Good.
years, thank God. So weirdly, I'm so verbose that this book was actually ginormous. So I, with the help of some very good friends, Jessica and Clement, Layla Amoros, and some of my other friends, these are author friends of mine, we figured out where to cut the book, and it ended up that I cut it. It was basically 2 books in one. So the
Mhm.
second book, The Raider, is actually almost completely written. I just have to do my editing, which is, a process, right?
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that the Raider will be maybe about a year and a half.
Okay.
So that's soon for me. And then after that comes Letter of Mark. And so Letter of Mark is the second book to Man of War, because I'm going to take a break between the Raider, which is the third one behind. So it goes the Raider, the Rebel, the Raider, and then the Renegade. So between the Raider and the Renegade will come Letter of Mark. And there's a reason it comes, because Man of War is the prequel. And Man of War also sets up part of the story so that we understand what's going on in the saga. In the Turncoat, we meet John Carlisle's brother, Gavin
Mhm.
Carlisle. And
Mhm.
Gavin has got some problems to solve that are related to the storyline as well as related to the war. And so that Letter of Mark will come after that. It is a sea story, because Man of War was a sea
Yeah.
story. And for my fans who love sea stories,
Mhm.
we'll have that. And then after that will come the Renegade. And then after
Mhm.
the Renegade is another John Carlisle story, because he is the hero of the saga. We
Mhm.
also will have a third to the Man of War series. There'll be a third to that piece of the story. There's also a book called The Minuteman, that is about 2 characters that we meet. One of them in the Rebel. We actually meet 2 of them in the Rebel. We've met already. Uh, Celeste Guard, her secret assassin. We don't know anything about him. And then we've also met the character Nicole, who
Mhm.
Shiloh James is narrating,
Mhm.
and she appears in The Rebel.
Mhm.
And so that's about those characters.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, we always love wanting to know what comes next. Even though today was the
Yes.
release date, we're like, what comes next?
And the sad thing is, like, that took me four
Yeah.
years to write, and I was like,
Yeah.
now that I'm done, I'm like, do I have to do it again? But yes, of course I have to do
Mhm.
it again, and I want to do it
Yeah.
again now. Thankfully, they've given me so much energy that
Hmm.
that I'm back at it.
Yeah.
So
Hey, Natalia, glad you guys can join us. Okay, so as far as the process goes, so you have the book almost fully written.
yeah,
Do you have the cover already done? No,
no,
because we
covers
love your
are.
covers. So.
Thank you. So I can actually take responsibility for the some of the covers. They are actually me and
Hmm.
my good friend, who's totally gorgeous and a hockey player for all you hockey people out there. He was a pro hockey player and he is now a coach and a very good friend of mine. I asked him one day, I'm like, how do you feel about dressing up and being on a cover? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So all the John Carlisle covers are actually me and him. We were mocked up on a green screen. The pictures were taken by the great Steve Miller. And then we also took those and then sent them to Demonza,
Hmm.
who I work with for my covers, and they mock them up.
Hmm.
So it's a very secret sauce process. It starts with my brain and then it goes to those people and then it goes further. So I
Hmm.
have to feel and like have all the things before we
Hmm.
get a cover. So as soon as I like have that moment where I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, that's what it looks like. Um, there isn't a cover yet. So more to come
Well, I
on
mean,
that.
you're such a planner too when it comes down to your books. I'm surprised. I'm kind of surprised, but at the same time, I'm glad that you're writing the stories and letting that also inspire what the covers may look like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and also some of it's incredibly not planned. I mean, like people always ask me, how did you come up with all the story? Like, I don't know. It just kind of worked out. And that's the truth. Like with Alexi's story, I mean, like
Hmm.
I said, it wasn't meant to be a book. So suddenly I was like, shit, I got to make a story out of this. Like, how am I going to do that? So,
Hmm.
I mean, that is a thing too. So some of it is literally you just let the characters take you on the story and it finds you.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the audiobook. Guys,
Yeah.
if you have any questions for TJ, start putting them in there. We'll try to do a quick Q&A session. So if you guys
Yeah.
can start putting them in the comments, we're going to talk a little bit about the audiobook while they
And
do
you can
that.
ask me about the audio stuff too. You never know what I might say.
Yeah.
But
She likes to be feisty that way.
it's a fun process. It is.
Yes, it is. So the audiobook will be out in summer of 2024. So we
Yeah.
only have a couple of months. Tell us exactly where we're at with that and what does that look like as far as for the release and
So
things like that we can make.
I've obviously, and we've announced the
Mm-hmm.
freaking incredible cast. Like, facts, I'm the luckiest like author in the world. I always say this, and I mean this. Like, I dream in audio. Like
Mm-hmm.
some, I mean, in respect to people who like Netflix and Apple and all those things, I dream in audio because I'm a control freak. So it's my story. Nobody augments it. I get to pick these amazing voices, which how I imagine
Mm-hmm.
them, and they do just this incredible thing. And I'm so gifted because Tara Lajala, Marnie Young, and Patrick Zeller are from my original cast, and obviously later came Nicholas Bolton, and then certainly John Hartley, and they really set the tone for the series, and it
Mm-hmm.
just really continued to grow in that way. So I have a cast. Thank you. They're amazing. And I can honestly say that between myself and Danielle Lanzarotto, we handpicked all these people
Yes.
through some of the most amazing auditions and and it's hard. It is hard. And we get just so many, and I would love to be able to cast everybody. Seriously, I'm like, I want to cast this person, this person, this person. But I actually only have so many casts. And the
Mm-hmm.
truth is, I love my people that I work with, and I would not trade them for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I want them to keep coming back, and like full disclosure. I mean, obviously Roger Delancey is not going to live forever, but like Patrick Zeller will live forever in my series. I mean, it's just a rule.
He
So
will be somebody
he
in his
will live
book.
forever. Actually, I wrote him a character because I was like, damn it, he can't die. So I can't have a book without him. So that's the truth. So where is it at right now? Well, they're going to start recording next month at the end of the
Yes.
month. Like, and that's the best because Danielle and I late at night, she'll be like, oh my God, you got to hear this. And she'll send me something at like 2 in the morning. And of course, I'll listen for the ding and I'll get up and I'm like, oh my God. That's the best part actually is um, when we start doing the recording
Mm-hmm.
process and then I get to be back in this space with these incredible people with so much energy and the gifts that they give me. I mean, seriously, like I don't really have to say much. They just create, and they're
Mhm.
so brilliant, and I'm just so fortunate, and they've just done such amazing work, and
Yeah.
that's
But
because they're amazing talents,
yes, they are. But also to give you credit, you provide them with exactly accents and the mood for the
Yes,
scene.
yes,
So
we
there's
do.
you
We do.
provide them with that guidance, and so they're allowed to have that freedom to portray what you've already
Yes.
given them.
Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. Yeah. So we do give them,
Hmm.
this is the character. I mean, okay, full disclosure. On Adam's, like, on his pages, there's like track changes. Okay, Adam, like, I want them to hear you in the cheap seats right
Hmm.
here. Like, I want to yell. And, I do a little bit of control freak in some places.
Hmm.
Okay. But I mean, and I do kind of set them up and let them know
Hmm.
what the character is like, what I'm looking for. Patrick Zeller knows when he gets pickups from me, I'm like, louder. Angrier. But but yes, I do.
Hmm.
We do set them up for success and all the information and about the character, and then they always have access to me if they want to ask any questions. And then certainly me and Danielle, and we do those things. And sometimes
Hmm.
there is booth time where we do get in. Some of the narrators want to get into the booth with me and do some direction, and we do that, or they get in with each other and stuff. And
Hmm.
that's a blessing if that's a choice that they want to do and stuff. So,
Hmm.
and then we have some who, some of my people who just, like, they know their characters so well, and they just, there's nothing to say. I just go, create. And they just create, and I'm so lucky because they
Hmm.
do every time, and and they get better every damn time, and
Yeah.
it's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will also say that they all seem to love it. Every time that we've gotten
I hope
together to do
so.
a podcast
Or
afterwards
at
to kind
least
of go
they
through
make
the
it listen.
conversation, there's always somebody. Patrick specifically always comes up with something naughty
He
to embarrass you at.
likes to embarrass me.
Yes.
Yeah. That last
Yeah, he
podcast,
does.
everybody knows I don't listen to my own sex scenes. Full
Yes.
disclosure. Like, I can't
Mm-hmm.
do it. I know my kids are, I'm going to use a bad word here.
Mm-hmm.
I know my kids are fucking. I don't want to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to hear them, just like you don't want to hear your kids doing it.
Right.
So, I mean, I know they are. I don't want to listen to it. So, it's a
Yeah.
thing. So
Yes.
he does like to mess with me and talk about that stuff. So good.
It's always fun. And you know that I volunteer as tribute
I
to help you
a
with those
lot of people
specific
do. I
themes.
get a lot of tribute on these. I do. And the funny
I
thing is, I'm
know.
like, how do I know that they didn't throw a weird moan in there that doesn't make any sense? I mean, I'm just taking it on somebody else's word that,
Yes.
no, it sounded good. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but seriously, there was one scene in Man of War, for my Man of War fans, the hammock scene.
Yes.
And and Danielle's like, just breathe through it.
Just
Just breathe through it. And I had to listen. And I was like, like, I mean, I needed the bag. The one scene, Shiloh James actually said, literally virtually held my hand. She's like, all right, we're going to listen to this together. We're going to do
mm-hmm.
this. So sometimes I do have to listen to them, and it's a journey into my own
Yeah.
psyche. So, mhm.
And then of course then Nicholas Bolton during our podcast mentions that scene.
Yeah. And he's like, how do you write your sex scenes, Tracy? I'm like, oh, well, I don't really want to talk about that. I'm like, how do you narrate them? He's like, I climb into a hammock and try it out. I'm like, oh, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
awful.
yeah. So with for the podcast with TJ's, we actually have a playlist over on SoundCloud where it has all the episodes that we've done with the full cast or them individually, depending on how we were doing it.
Yes.
Every year with every book release, we kind of do something a little
Yeah.
different for the podcast. So it's been fun, and I'm not telling you guys what we're doing this
I know.
time around because
I'm
June.
excited. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. Me too. June being audiobook month, for those that did not know, June is audiobook month. So we're going to be really umping up the antic for the podcast. And we're celebrating 10 years for the series. And I am so grateful that you've been part of that for a big chunk of the
Thank
time.
you.
And that you trusted me to have these conversations with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all that. It's been great. So we do have a question for you.
Okay.
It
Oh,
says,
question.
all right, so Alicia says, as you are writing, how long do you plan research before putting words on paper?
Ooh, well, okay. So research is rabbit holes that can happen. I will tell you that I'm usually researching. Well, part of it, I know a lot of this history already because I've been living in it now for so
Mm-hmm.
long. That being said, research is an ongoing process. So a lot of times I will spend about a year to 2 years while I'm working on another book researching the next one. And then while I'm in the writing process, there's a lot of times where I end up in rabbit holes where I'm like, okay, I need to know what this fort looks like. I need to go down to details. I need to pull archival archival records. Because once I'm in the writing, I realize I need to be able to build the world for the
Mm-hmm.
reader. So I will say that there's a point where like I'm working for about maybe a year or so, like as I'm doing another book, but then while I'm actually writing it, I'm knees deep. And a lot of times I actually go on site while I'm writing. I am a visual learner. Some people are auditory. Everybody's a little different. So for me to really, I need to be spatially aware. So a lot of times, like I'll go to Fort Stanwix. I've been there like a million times. They're tired of looking at me. Or I'll go to like Fort Niagara. And not only do I take pictures and videos, but I will walk it, like smell it, feel it, like get that energy to come
Mm-hmm.
towards me so that when I can recreate it, we're all in the space together. So and there's a lot of like nature sites in this book. And so me and my husband did a lot of walking along the St. Lawrence. We did a lot of traveling through that region. It's very similar to where I'm from, but we like walked some of the paths that the characters potentially could have walked, just so like we can get, even though it's different, that forest is different now, we could still get that sense of what it
Mm-hmm.
looks like. So my hope is that when the reader gets into those spaces, they can create their own visual of it, because not everybody lives in my region of the world, so they don't really have a sense of what that looks like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think it's important too, especially when you have characters that are like 6'5", if they're going into a building that we may have been as
yeah,
well because of, field trips. And we're going, or we not have the information, we're going, we're trying to do
right.
the math and we're going, I don't compute. So
Well, and here's the thing. So many of these beautiful, fantastic historical sites in upstate New York have been really forgotten
hmm
largely, and we've forgotten those pieces of our history. And so Fort Ontario is still there. You can visit it, although it's the 1812 version of it. It's not the Revolutionary War version. There's the Fort Niagara, which is incredible. It's a stone fort from the French and Indian War. It's the same one that would have been there during the Revolution. And then Niagara
hmm
Falls would have been there. It's a historic site. And then certainly the Battle of Oriskany, and then Fort Stanwix. These beautiful forts, people drive by them on the freeway every day and are like, okay, who gives a crap about these, you
Yeah.
know? But the history and the people who died there and the meaning behind those places are so incredible and so important to the founding of our nation that like it does a disservice for me to not call them by their name and to not visit those sites and not to give those appropriate descriptions, so that you know I understand I'm not writing like tangible historic biographies. I'm writing fiction. But when I was there actually at Fort Ontario, the historian there was like, listen, your books, people get people to come to my
hmm
location. Whether they're fiction or not, your books get people here. So we want
hmm
you on our shelves
Yeah.
here because you will get people to come here. So my hope is that when someone walks through it, maybe they walk through it later and go, John Carlyle walked through this. You
hmm
know, if that's what makes them think and then go and learn and listen and understand, then the whole journey's been served, right?
hmm
So yeah, that's a great question about the history and the research. It's an ongoing thing, to be very
hmm
honest. I'm actually going down to Colonial Williamsburg in another couple months to do more research. I learned how to fire muskets down there, like uniforms, layers, dressing, clothing. I do a lot of that work. Food, we forget that food that they eat, what they drank, like how they served, how they cooked, all those things are very well studied at Colonial Williamsburg if you've never been there. And it's a great place to, as a researcher, to get that
hmm
information. So
Yeah, it's. I think it's important. It's really good to have that research, and like you said, it really does make you want to go visit that location. I know that when I was reading Sherilyn Kenyon's one of her YA series, it took place in New Orleans,
yes,
and then I went to New Orleans, and I was like, "There's the bar," or
what a
"There's that other restaurant from."
what a great location
Yes,
too. Oh my God, New
and
Orleans, it's all
yeah,
there, right? So much amazing
exactly.
history.
Exactly. And things like that always are like you put two and two together, and to be able to walk through something that might still be around or close enough to it, it's really like haunting in a good way. You know what I mean? You kind of
Yeah.
see
Can
that.
we can we get close to our history?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can we touch it? You know, is it tangible to us?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beautiful thing I love about historic fiction, historic romance. Yes, we're giving a love story, but can we take that reader and take them back to that place of our history and
Mm-hmm.
give them that moment of touch,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that touch point.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in love with history, and it's I still do. So it's funny when people always go, "You write historical." I'm like, "Yeah, that's crazy. I do, right?" But
Yeah, you don't. I mean, for those that have seen her in public or at events, leather pants, stiletto heels, and boots and stuff like that, and mohawk doesn't really give you historical vibes. However, pulls it off completely in that red coat that she had. over
Thank
at the events.
you. That was fun.
Yeah, I know you posted some photos. It was in your newsletter too that you shared today's in the release.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so it's great. I mean, I know everybody was going, "Oh my God." It was
The funny thing was, and
fantastic.
I admitted it, it's from Guess Jeans. I
Yeah.
bought it about like 20 years ago. So I have nothing to do with that. That's George's Marciano. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. I got one more question. I have to say, I
Yeah.
was not a historical reader until I went to historical panel RTD, and I have a whole new respect. Thank
Mhm.
you. You know what? There are so many amazing historical writers out there.
Mhm.
I see Danny laughing. She's
Yeah.
laughing right there.
Yeah.
There's so many fabulous historical authors out there. And I think right now we're just not in the mainstream. We're just not seen, but we've been around and we're still around
Mhm.
doing our thing. And I mean, Bridgerton brought some attention to
Mhm.
it, right? Love Bridgerton, right?
Mhm.
But there's also, right now there's good TV. There's Benjamin Franklin right now
Mhm.
on Apple Plus. There's The New Look, which is more modern. People love Downton Abbey,
Yep.
so there's so many great historical stories we just forget in books that were
Mhm.
here too. So
Yeah.
for all of you out there, from RTD to this moment, thank you for everything.
Mhm.
Thank you. Welcome to the revolution.
Yes, thank you.